Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, giving you the edge you need to get into the colleges of your dreams, with your host, Steve Schwartz. That's me. Today, we're talking with David Singh. Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, David. How are you doing today?
Really great, Steve. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being on. Now, you've got a really exciting story here. You interviewed over 1,000 college students about what they did in college to make the most of that time, and then you wrote a book called Hitting Stride. Tell us a little bit about how you got started with this project.
Well, I think it's something that I started from my own experience coming from high school, getting into college, trying to figure out where to go. All of the elements that I'm sure all the listeners are trying to figure out, how do I get into college? What's the right way? And then it was also trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do at the end of college? And I was just lucky in the sense of I grew up in a house that we had a lot of cocktail parties. Our parents were social people, and I got to know a lot of older folks who had been there and done that. And I tried to apply that along the way. And I took a lot of lessons from mentors who helped me out. And then I used some of those lessons, and I looked back on all the time I've spent hiring people and interviewing people and our work with Kira, and really tried to pull out some lessons because of that I think are going to be helpful to share with others. And that's sort of why I wrote the book. And it's as applicable to high school students going into college as it is from college going into the working world.
Totally. It's all the same stuff, making the most of the time you've got in school in order to take it to the next level afterwards. So what were some of the best practices and worst practices you saw? Like you have some students who don't do a whole lot, and then you have others who do a ton. What really separates the two?
Yeah, so I think the people have heard it before, but it's time management is a big one. And the way I frame this up to explaining this to high school students is you've got 168 hours in the week, and you're leading in sort of along the way. And you've got let's say you're going to go to school for 40 of those. Most sort of high school students are about 40 hours when you include your homework and stuff. You're going to sleep for 50, let's say 7 hours a day. So you're about 50 hours along the way, and you're going to shower and eat and get to school and whatnot for another 25 hours along the way. And so that leaves at the end of it, when you package it all up, it's about 33 hours of extra time. And that's sort of whether you're going to be specialized in a sport or you're going to try something new, you're going to be in a band and something extra. And I think that's the extra part that college admission folks are really looking for. Everyone goes to school. Everyone's going to have marks. Everyone is going to be fairly similar in that, but it's that extra thing that's going to help step you apart. And that's where, to me, it's if you can figure out what to do with that extra time and to try and do more things than others, you're going to have more experiences, and it's going to be more interesting for yourself, but also for the admissions officers.
So tell us about some of the students you saw who were making the most of that extra, was it 33 hours? Tell us some of the ones who really stood out. Give us some stories about what their experiences were like and what they did.
Yeah. So I think just loads of people that are, sometimes you'd call them the overachievers, but sometimes they're just the folks that are doing a few extra things. So people who could explain to me and the story of getting that part-time job and working at the restaurant or whatever it might be, but also being self-reflective on knowing that, you're working at a restaurant. What does it mean to be in client service, to be attentive, to be on time? All of those things that you would think that it's just a 10-hour-a-week job on the weekends or whatnot can mean so much from an experience perspective. So that part-time job is one thing that I see with students all the time, of being able to say, make sure that job is insightful, not just going to the mall and working at a store, but taking some lessons out of what that job is something that most of the people who are successful have been reflective on the job that they've taken.
Definitely. Having that extra moment to reflect, why are you doing this? What did you get out of it? That's something you could take later and craft into your college admissions essay maybe. Or you could, make sure that your letters of rec cover that a bit more. Definitely.
Absolutely. And I think on that is that ability to tell a good story. It's not enough to just show up at school. It's not enough to just show up to that job and say you had it, but that you pulled things out of that job. And I would say that if you're not trying to grow and develop at everything you're doing, there's times when you got to relax and go see a movie and hang out. But if you're going to do something, take the lessons out of that job. And maybe it's like, I definitely don't want to work in the restaurant for the rest of my life. That's a pretty good lesson to learn, and people want to hear about that. But also things that try and see the story in everything that you're doing.
Definitely. there's always a moment in time you can take someone to and really bring them to your experience at that job in that extracurricular. Tell me you interviewed over 1,000 people. Tell me, one of the craziest students you encountered. Maybe they were like a super overscheduler or super diligent about documenting everything they did. Who really stands out to you out of those students?
To me, it was I interviewed one girl, and she was just this huge athletic sort of wonk. She played all sorts of sports along the way, but it was amazing to see that she said no to a number of sports because she was really focusing on, and she was a horseback, she was an equestrian rider, and she was talented in all those things, but she said, I'm really going to focus on this because it's something that I know if I do well at, I'm going to be able to, for her, it was jumping over a certain height of the horse fences. I didn't know the particulars around it. She told this story so convincingly, but the thing that was most impressive to me is that her strategy said, I'm passionate about this. I think I can be good at this, and I'm going to say no to other things. And I think it's not so much about saying no to everything, but she said, I'm going to say no to this so I can be better at it. And that mastery of things, I think, is something that is unique in high school students moving into university. And I think it's a balancing act. I'm on the fence of it because I think there's times when for you to get masterful at something, you need to spend a lot of time at it. But there's also a time when it's great to do a bunch of things, and it's okay to be spread thin in high school. But if you can find those few things that you're going to be really good at, those are the things that you need to find a few of those every once in a while.
Absolutely. You don't want to be a jack of all trades and master of none. You don't want to just be a member of 20 different clubs. You want to be super involved in maybe a couple of clubs or a couple of extracurriculars, and then really become a master of whatever field it is that you're most interested in, or whatever topic you're most interested in. And definitely that really resonates a lot with me. If you're just sitting in the back of some club meeting, and saying, oh, well, I'm a member of this club, I'll write this on my college application, that you can't make a good story about sitting in the last row, fiddling with your phone. You've got to really take on some sort of role in the organization in order to have a story that you can later talk about, whether it's in your college essay or whether it's when you're talking to an alumnus or admission officer during that college interview.
Yeah. There's one story I had on that memorable time. I asked it was interviewing. He was going into software engineering at school, and he was sort of in his first and second year. And I said, what's the time when you've been sort of most scared in your sort of professional sort of career sort of experience along the way? And I said, you can use your high school stories as well. And he said, well, you know what? I wasn't really good at public speaking or being sort of out there. And he was a reserved kind of guy. And he said, so I decided that I was going to go out for the school musical. And so here's this guy who couldn't really sing, scared of audiences, but he went in and talked to the director and said, look, I really want to do this because I think it's going to be good for me. And they found him a small role. He didn't have to do too much along the way. But it's like I speak in front of an audience quite often, and I'm always scared. So I couldn't, and I'm comfortable at it. I say I'm used to it. But that sort of fear of going and doing something was, to me, it meant so much to me in that interview to him, because it was something that he said, here's a limit. I know I'm going to push past it. And at the end of the day, the worst thing that could have happened was he could have flubbed a line or forgot something, and people would have forgotten about it down the way. So I think trying to find those little things, it might just be a small part in a play or a small part in something, to do something a little scary, I think is totally fine. And especially in high school, to try and do that as many times as you can.
Absolutely. I mean, on the one hand, you do want to find some things that you can excel at in some way, but at the same time, you grow by putting yourself in a challenging situation. Mm-hmm. And you learn by doing. And, definitely, I think, lots of our listeners out there are scared of public speaking. I still get a little bit nervous before I give a presentation or a talk of some kind, but you get better at it the more you do it. And that's definitely a growth opportunity that you can showcase in the college essay, in the college interview. Don't pretend to be perfect. No one likes someone who's super arrogant. Exposing a little bit of vulnerability when you talk with someone, it definitely makes you more relatable and more likable. And people don't necessarily accept the students, who they find to be the best at things. Obviously you want to be the best, you want to excel, but at the same time, one factor they consider is how much they like you. Mm-hmm. And showcasing that vulnerability, being a real human, because we all step back at the end of the day inside our own heads, and we all have our doubts and fears and stresses. So if someone else exposes that just a little bit as well, we're definitely going to relate to that more.
Totally. And I think one of my favorite quotes, and it kind of leads into, I'm not when we want to talk about a future looking sort of framework is the success is really the quality of your experiences times the quantity of those experiences. And so I have no idea in terms of you need to do so many things, or these are the exact thing you need to do to get admitted, or these are the exact things. But I do know that the more you have better experiences in your life, I believe this to be true, and I've seen it across numbers of people I've interviewed along the way, is the happier you're going to be, and you're going to be exposed to more things. And because of that, you're going to find what really motivates you and makes you passionate about what program you want to choose. But also, once you're in that program, how are you going to be successful in that program or that school?
Absolutely. It comes back to exposing yourself to opportunities, which is so key. A big thing that's hot these days is, the startup space. And you try a lot of things, you might fail at some, but you got to try more things in order to ultimately find more things that you will succeed at. So it's about taking those chances.
Absolutely. And I think that back to that sort of being perfect side of things, if someone says to me that they're perfect and they haven't had a time when they failed along the way, that to me is the biggest red flag in any interview, no matter what. And the juicier, the worse the story is, the more I'm excited to know who that person is and what happened. And I always use, I tried, this was back, I won't tell you how many years ago, but a few years ago, when I was in college, and my biggest failure in college was I tried to bring Kanye West in for a show.
Oh, wow.
And I had everything lined up. Everything was good. We had the stages in there. We had some fundraising ready to go to help pay for it. We had the police. The police chief was excited about this. He was excited.
Yeah.
Ready to go. He didn't know who Kanye West was, but he was excited about it. I think he thought he was a Western act, like a country singer.
Yeah. West, yeah. I like it.
But long story short, we didn't have the actual funds to make the risk along the way. Now I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm always willing to take the risks. The school wasn't, but I failed at not being able to deliver the promise, but I also failed at not being able to convince people on the vision along the way. And it still haunts me to this way. But I talked about that in loads of different interviews, both getting after it from my undergrad into my master's, but then also into jobs afterwards. Those stories resonate with people, and people still ask me like, "Hey, are you going to do another show, or what's going to happen?" And people love those kind of memorable stories.
I love it. And I like you more just because you told me this story where you failed, because I'm like, wow, this guy took on such a huge project and had a huge vision. And even though you didn't succeed, David, I'm thinking like, wow, like I'm sure you go back to that moment in time in your head and you're like, wow, what should I have done differently? You thought about what you could have done differently. And next time you want to run an event, or next time you want to do anything big, you're going to have learned a lesson from the Kanye time that you're going to apply going forward. I mean, I think, if someone tells me that like they've never had a failure, they're either lying or they haven't tried enough things in life. And I want people who try, and I want people who have learned some lessons.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I see frequently, and a distinction between high school, then moving into college, and even from college into the working world, is there's less and less, or so there's more and more scarcity of reward. So a scarcity economic terms for everyone who hasn't taken econ yet, is really that there is a limited supply of it. So when you think about high school marks, there are as many marks as there are in the students in the classroom, and you're able to give that out to everyone. Everyone could get 100% theoretically, if you do all of the work. In the real world, that isn't the case. There isn't enough bonus dollars around for everyone to get top bonus. There isn't enough jobs in the marketplace for everyone to get a job. And really around, when you're thinking about these experiences, there aren't enough great there's loads of great experiences along the way, and these are ways that you can try to have an advantage over people by saying, because everyone can do everything in in high school grades and they're great and along the way, and that doesn't really differentiate you enough. But saying I did these other things as well makes your application peak. And I think that's what admissions officers are really looking for, those sort of peak moments. And again, they can be very, very minute to say, I took on a small role in a play and I did there and I did it. And it was beyond my comfort zone, versus I was the director of the play or I tried to do the concert, whatever it might be. But look for those peak moments is really important for people. And one of the things, and can we segue into the Future Me resume? Is that, can I give that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a cool thing to share with folks. And, again, I think it has application for high school just as much as it does for undergrad. And really the idea is that you've got 4 years in high school and 4 years in undergrad for most college programs. And so that means you've got 48 months. And so when we're talking about these peak moments, it's what are those things that are exceptional, remarkable, that are make you a little different, and those experiences that are the quality of those experiences. So let's try, everyone can aim to have one great memory once a month. That could be maybe it's a first date, maybe it's a great test score, maybe you ran a personal best on a mile run, whatever it might be, something that you said, you know what, I really did something, I feel proud about this, and then I'm happy to tell my parents about along the way. Moving into then, you want to have a leadership experience once a quarter. So a quarter in like business terms is every 3 months. And so you've got, you're going to take your summers off, but you've got sort of 3 quarters during the school year. And so you want to lead something every quarter. Maybe in grade 9, it's going to start leading a group project, or you're going to lead, you're going to be captain of a team one semester. You're going to lead an extracurricular club or something like that in some way. Could be leading yourself. You want to run a marathon or you want to do something crazy like that, or half marathon. Lead yourself. And then finally, every summer, you want to have a great summer job or summer experience. My sister was a big camp person. She went to camp. I was a business guy. I started businesses and had fun with that. I traveled a bit as well. My parents were nice enough to kick me out of the house to go traveling. And so I think those things that are memorable, and I remember getting my, going for an interview after my first year of university because of my high school resume. And my resume was stronger, not because I was smarter than other people or better than other people, because I'd done more things than other people, than a fourth year student. And so I was literally working my first summer at an investment shop with fourth year university students because my high school experiences were so strong. And again, it wasn't because I was special or anything different. I just happened to do a lot more than other people had.
Absolutely. You opened yourself up to those opportunities. That's so key in order to grow. And there's really something you said that I love, David, which was the idea of you could lead yourself. Because I think so many of our listeners out there, they know that colleges love leadership. They love people who are the leader of a club or organization. But the thing is, not everyone wants to be the alpha. Not everyone loves the spotlight. And obviously, you want to challenge yourself a bit on that and try to seek out those opportunities. But at the same time, you could lead yourself. Running a marathon, that's a growth opportunity that doesn't require anyone else other than you. If you lead a group presentation in class, a small group work, maybe you'll be in front of the class for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but it's not the same thing as, wanting to give a big speech or wanting to maybe, giving a talk somewhere. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind, the framing of how you see the activities that you're doing. And also I understand, a big part of this is tracking those experiences that you have so that you have them to talk about later during a college interview or when you're trying to come up with a college essay topic.
Absolutely. And I think that's we could probably have a whole session on just journals and keeping track of things along the way. But I think being that reflective part, and look, I should put the big caveat on there. I didn't go and do this when I was in high school saying I'm going to keep a journal of every major moment. It definitely would have worked on great dates. There probably would have been more bad dates than good dates. But it's something that this is something that I can say looking backwards. And this is sort of my hope in giving advice to people of saying, this is what I've seen along the way. And it's tough to do, but I think, Steve, absolutely that sort of leadership of self. And in the working world, I think the thing to remember I think it has application going from the high school into college, as well as no one cares more about your career than you do. In high school, I think probably your parents sometimes care more than you do sometimes, but I think no one will impact your career unless you want to impact sort of your career. And I say career is which college you want to go to and where do you want to go from there. And it doesn't need to be as serious as saying what career do you want to be. It's like, where are you going to have the most amount of fun and learn the most and meet the most amount of great friends and people and have the best experiences. And that's what you want to care most about. And what in high school, if you could have more experiences that help you try different things and think about different things, that's what you need to look for. And back to that sort of original sort of time clock of that 168 hours in the week, there's a lot of time for you to not watch TV and decide to go do something else. I think we're living in the coolest time in history. There's more things to learn on the internet to do, to connect with people than it's ever been before. So if you're listening to this podcast, you're already doing great things about thinking about where to go and what to do. And so I'd say after you're done this, is great. Now go and do something really cool today that's going to help you sort of be more remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Sitting around watching TV isn't going to lead to some massive breakthrough. It's not going to change your life. Same goes for, just mindlessly browsing the internet or something. You got to get out there and do something. Think about those hours in the week. Now, I know, most of our listeners aren't in 9th grade or 10th grade and don't necessarily have the time, to go forward and plan the next 4 years of high school and structure it in the sort of more formal sense that you've been talking about. But at the same time, you can still maybe look back at your planner if you keep one, or go back through your email archives, and maybe you can identify some leadership moments, whether external or internal, and think about which of those even seemingly ordinary moments you found to be a personal growth opportunity that you can frame when you're talking to an admission officer, when you're choosing a college essay topic. So I think it's really valuable to keep that system in mind. And yeah, if you are a junior or senior in high school and you know someone younger, give them this message of thinking about what's your resume later going to look like. I definitely was in the same position as you, David. Like when I was in 9th grade, I wasn't thinking about, I've got to start thinking about college applications, but don't even think about it that way. Think about it as, I want to grow as a person. I want to develop some leadership qualities and skills and become more interesting, because so much of this always comes back to planning ahead in some way. And even if you're a high school junior or senior and you're looking to apply to college, you've still got to think about, that job you hope to get 4 years later, because no one just walks around, handing out jobs unless you've got massive connections of some kind. You know what I mean? You're going to have to create those opportunities. You have to create your own luck. And it's by having those sorts of experiences. So thanks so much for sharing that model. It's definitely really useful. Structure it out, every year down to every quarter. Think about what you could be doing with those other 33 hours in the week. They'll make a huge difference in the long run. Now, I want to shift gears now, David, and move into the lightning round, where I'm going to ask you some rapid-fire questions. You give me some rapid-fire responses. Are you ready?
I'm ready to go. Ready to go.
Awesome. What's your number one piece of advice for the college admissions process?
I think I'll go back to the idea of being able to try as many different things as you can and focus to help you focus on those things that you're really passionate about, and then really focus your application on those few things, those one or two things that you're really passionate about, and say, this is why I'm deeply passionate about it. So again, trying with a number of things to find your focus on what you're passionate about. Definitely, that reflection is so key. What's one habit that you believe contributes to college admissions success? I think tracking your what's working for you and what's not, and taking that time to be saying, I'm part of this, but it's not really helpful or adding to me, but it's not something I'm passionate about, and being able to shift gears because of it. And so to say no to things that you aren't passionate about, I think is a good thing. Definitely adjusting as needed, learning from those previous mistakes. Totally. What's one online college admissions resource that you absolutely love? I love, to be honest, LinkedIn. And the reason I say that is if you're applying to college, look at people who've gone to that school, research them, have a good LinkedIn profile, and reach out to them and say, hey, why did you go to that college, and get to know them. You're going to learn a ton more from talking to some alumni than you will from the admissions page about what it's really like to be at that school. I think it's super valuable that you can do. And Facebook probably works as well, but LinkedIn's a little easier.
Definitely. Alumni are definitely going to give you more of the real deal than the admission offices will. That's totally true. What's one book that you believe no college applicant should be without?
So I'm a big Robin Sharma fan. He's a great sort of leadership author, and he's written a book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And I think it's this great book on. It's really easy to read. It's a fable. It's not written in business speak or really sort of fluffy leadership speak. It's very poignant on what you can do. And I think it's one of those books you read on a beach, or you read while you're after a good hike along the way, and you're in some sort of good spot to read it. And I think at any age you can reread it, and you getting into college is going to sort of think about who you are as a leader, what are you looking for in your life, what's going to drive your happiness. And I think the thing that is behind all of that is that you need to do hard work. You need to push hard for it, but then it doesn't feel like hard work if you're passionate about what you're doing. Robin's The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari is a great one for college admission students.
Definitely. Zoom out, look at the big picture, think about what you're doing, why you're doing it. You're about to make a massive commitment for 4 years. You want to make the most of it and enjoy the most out of that. So thank you so much for sharing that, David. You've been great. So it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. What are you up to these days?
So right now I'm at Cure Academic. We help top schools admit the best students using video interviewing. And it's a great way for you to introduce yourself and who you are. With my book, With Hitting Stride, I often speak at colleges about sort of how to be successful in your post-college career along the way. And I've also recently got into woodworking. So that's my sort of personal hobby of the thing that if you want to talk about making mistakes, get into woodworking, and it's a lot of mistakes, but it's a lot of fun.
Good. Well, it sounds like you're enjoying it. You're learning from those mistakes. The next project will be even better. Thanks so much for joining us, David. Where can folks find you online?
Thanks, Steve. Well, the best place, my Twitter handle is at David James Singh, or you can find us at Stryde.ca, or you can come visit us at kiraacademic.ca or .com.
Awesome. We'll link to all of those in the show notes. Thanks so much for joining us, David. Take care.
Thanks, Steve. I had a lot of fun.
Back when I was applying to college, I had a mentor who helped me a ton with my college essays. He gave me some great advice that helped me make sure I was answering the key questions that admission officers are asking themselves. And with his help, I was able to significantly improve my rough drafts and submit an effective college essay in the end. It's one of the main reasons I ended up getting into Columbia. And in my conversations with admission officers since then, they've told me several of the key questions they're asking themselves as they read your college essays. I just want to share a couple of them with you now. One of the big ones they ask is, are you involved in your activities because you actually enjoy them, or are you just doing them because you want to get into college? They're also asking if you've gone outside of your high school classes to learn and do research on your own. Another big thing they look to ask themselves is, have you demonstrated an ability to overcome difficult circumstances and distractions in order to succeed? They also want to know if you have the focus and the commitment and the drive to get through college, because it's going to be tough sometimes. These are just a couple of them, but in my premium college essay course, we'll help you make sure you're answering all these questions and many other ones that college admission officers are asking themselves as they review your college essay. You can sign up to get access at collegeadmissionstoolbox.com/essays. And before I sign off, I want to give you some advice from Anthony, a student I helped last year. He's now at UPenn, and he had some advice to share on answering the question about whether you're able to overcome those difficult challenges. He wrote to me, and I quote, "Write about mentors and hard work situations. I spoke very honestly about being inexperienced as an intern at a startup and what I learned from it. It's key to be honest about your weaknesses. Nobody's weakness is that they are too diligent or that they're always on time. Everybody has weaknesses. More importantly, what have you done to work on overcoming your weaknesses?" So I want you to look at your college essay drafts again and have the people helping you review your essays ask themselves whether you're answering these questions and edit as you need to. Then email me your final draft at steve@collegeadmissionstoolbox.com. I'd love to see what you've written.
Thanks for listening to College Admissions Toolbox. Head over to www.collegeadmissionstoolbox.com to get more free tools and resources that will help you get into the colleges of your dreams.